Morning everyone, and welcome to the first in our Conversations With series focusing on the manufacturing sector. I'm Allison Allington, partner in our Truro office down here in Cornwall, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Eric Nicholls, MD of Spiral UK. Spiral are the largest bespoke spiral staircase manufacturer in the UK. And Eric is probably the most knowledgeable person about staircases that you'll ever meet. And he's also got another hat. He's chair of Cornwall Manufacturing Group. So it's going to be really great to hear from him with both of those hats on. Before I introduce Eric, just for your information, there is a Q&A available. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen. So you can post questions to Eric either anonymously or under your own name, and we'll do questions at the end. I think the webinar is going to be about 45 minutes in total. If we don't get around to doing all of the questions and you've left your name, then we'll try to get back to you afterwards. So without further ado, Eric, it's great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Alison. Delighted to be able to join you today and looking forward to talking about the story of Spiral and manufacturing generally in Cornwall.
Great. So on the story of Spiral, I know the story myself and it's really interesting. So can you tell us a little bit about how it started with you and your dad on the Lizard and where you are today?
Oh, it's a long story, and as with all these things, there's been some twists and turns. I never intended to go into manufacturing. My dad was a builder, my granddad was a builder, my great granddad was a builder. I didn't want to be a builder, didn't want to have anything to do with construction, and nor did my dad want me to follow him into the trade. So when I left school, I wanted to go into banking and got a job with NatWest Bank, just with a few O levels. Didn't even chuck in A levels to start work. School was not for me, and much as I enjoyed it, but I wanted to get into the big wide world. Loved working for a bank. Absolutely hated the big company culture. Couldn't cope with it. When you're 18, you know everything, and don't like the idea of people around you who are older and more experienced telling you that you don't know. So my dad had been doing some work for a few years, carrying out subcontract installation work for another little staircase company. They'd asked him to set up a manufacturing operation as they were having quality problems with their current one. He decided he'd had enough of construction, having never had a choice to do anything else. So we took the absolute leap of faith. I chucked in my job. He rented a little factory unit, and we set up to make staircases initially just for somebody else, which went swimmingly for about 8 months until they ran out of work, and first lesson of business, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So we ran out of work. We were making somebody else's product, so we couldn't improve it. It wasn't our design to play with, even though we could see there were technical improvements that could be made. So we sort of had a go ourselves, came up with our own designs, initially just making concrete, precast concrete spiral staircases. And then gradually, through lots of ups and downs, we grew a bit. We diversified then into starting to make staircases out of metal, steel, stainless steel, and then the business has gradually grown from there. So from the early days, there were just 3 of us in one little workshop, and now we've grown to what we are now with about 40 people in a 20,000 square foot purpose-built factory. So it's been a long journey, lots of ups and downs, lots of twists and turns, and just shows that sort of where you start out from in life is not always where you end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you do, the work you do now is really high-end, isn't it? You do high-end residential, commercial fit-out stuff. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's one of the many changes that we've seen over time, is that the spiral staircase industry, when we went into it, was largely based on kit and component and standard products. How the market has changed over time is that the demand has increased for bespoke, purpose designed stairs, which we've we've gone into, and we now produce, design, make and install staircases for some of the the most famous buildings in the country, and some of the biggest and nicest houses.
Can you name a few of the buildings that you've put these staircases into?
Yeah, we've done work in the Gherkin. We've done lots of work in what's now the Salesforce Tower, which was the Heron Tower, which was the tallest building in the UK until the Shard was finished. So we've installed staircases up to the 38th floor, I think, of the Salesforce Tower. We've done work on some, residential projects that the houses are in tens of millions. We're now working on an apartment in London, and it's going to go on sale for in excess of 35 million.
Wow. How do you enter into those markets? What did you have to do to get out of Cornwall and into the rest of the UK and into the southeast? It's been a long journey, and part of that was in recent years was that we rebranded from our original name of Spiral Construction to Spiral UK, to show that we operated nationally rather than regionally. Marketing and the market and how you reach it has changed so much, as I'm sure for all businesses over time. Originally, we used to advertise in trade magazines. That was how people knew about you, and then also you were listed in physical trade directories and books. Obviously, the internet and online marketing has changed all of that, in that you have a website and you have to make sure your website is as good as it possibly can be, and then people find you. And over time, often we've been asked, can you make this? And we sort of scratch our heads and think, well, we've never made one like that, but we think we can probably have a go at it. And you have to be brave. Sometimes it goes wrong, sometimes it doesn't work, but you have to follow where the market leads you with whatever product you're manufacturing. And if someone says, can you do it, then always try to answer yes. Sometimes you have to go away and think about how you're going to do it after you said yes. Say yes and figure out how later.
Exactly.
So how do you service these customers in the southeast? Do you have a team of people around the country?
We do. A few years ago we opened up a satellite office near Cambridge, where our sort of sales and contract team are based. So they're geographically much easier place, better place to physically service these customers. We've always worked on the philosophy that if the customer wants to see you, you go and see them, whether they're in Glasgow or Belfast or the Channel Islands. If somebody wants to talk to you, then the onus really should be on you to go and get yourself in front of them. It's really up to you to sell yourself. You can have the greatest product in the world, and we were victims of that at the beginning. We thought, oh well, we can make these things better than anybody else. Well, maybe you can, but if no one knows, then you're not going to sell any. So you've got to go and tell people, and if somebody is interested to talk to you, then you've got to get on your bike and go and talk to them. That's always been something I've always done. So you spend an awful lot of time on the road, not so much in the last few months, but for many years. It's, if a customer is interested, you've got an inquiry, go and sell it. And you've got to back yourself. You've got to have if you've got the confidence to think yours is the best product, then you've got to go and tell somebody why.
That's great. Really great advice, Eric. Thank you. Can we talk about the processes, the interesting scientific bit, if you like, how it's evolved over time, what the traditional methods used to be, and how you can do things now? Yeah,
it has changed out of all recognition, really. Initially, we were making, as I say, fairly standard component-based things, and that's moved into making things that are much more bespoke and physically larger than they were. So originally we didn't have anywhere near the amount of resources or time to design things. We just made a kit of bits, if you like. So now it's changed around completely, and it often takes longer to design a staircase than to actually produce it. The design period can be months and months on some of the complicated designs. So obviously over time CAD has come in and grown. You know, initially I used to draw things on pieces of paper and send to customers to say this is what it's going to look like. You know, then we got into CAD, then we got into 3D CAD and modelling. So now we produce, you know, the customer can see exactly, almost like a photograph of what their staircase is going to look like before we start to produce it.
That's great. There's actually one question that I think is probably relevant here. Someone said, with all of Spiral's bespoke designs, has there ever been one that you couldn't achieve?
Yeah, I mean, there are times when we've tried to make things and technically it doesn't work. For instance, we spent a long time trying to work out how to make floating cantilevered stairs in concrete, basically replicating a method we'd already used with natural stone material, and it technically it didn't work. We tried and tested, and in the end we had to accept that what we were trying to do was technically not possible and to go about it in another way. So I often describe that, you know, what we're doing is almost like making a prototype every time. When you make something that's bespoke, if you're not copying what's been gone before and did work, then there's always an element of uncertainty. So you put all your expertise into it. Sometimes it technically just doesn't work.
Yeah. And, you know, on the topic of uncertainties, you identify technological uncertainties with every bespoke specification that comes in from the client, don't you? And in doing so, you've been able to claim R&D tax credits for the business, which has been quite important to you, hasn't it?
It has. R&D tax credits, you know, been around for quite a long time, but I thought, like many people thought, that research and development was, you know, people in laboratories in white coats, and it's not till it was explained to us by yourselves that we understood that research and development wasn't sort of things in test tubes. It was actually trying things out practically to see whether they work, or in some cases if they don't work. So and then as part of that we realised that we were already doing research and development as part of our everyday job, and that most of what we do contains an element, large or small, of R&D. Once we understood that and then started documenting it and explaining it and understanding it better, that's led us to use the R&D tax credit scheme, which has been a great help to us, as it has to many manufacturing businesses.
Yeah, it's really helpful, isn't it? What do you think the key is to keeping the team constantly innovating and able to overcome these challenges?
I think you've got to try and create a sort of a can-do culture, and if a customer says, you know, you make blue widgets but I'd like a red one, then I think too many companies say, well, no, we make blue ones, and it'd be really difficult for us to make a red one, and that'd be really awkward, and actually that's quite disruptive to us, and we don't really want to be bothered with that. And you should always look at someone asking for something different as an opportunity to broaden your product range, an opportunity to make more profit. Quite simply, often if someone's asking for something that's different, it's because it's not already easily available, and often they're willing to pay an awful lot more for the red widget than the blue widget. So I think you have to have a can-do, you know, positive culture.
And you've had a lot of people stay with you for a long time, haven't you? Some of your engineers and designers have been with the business for a number of years.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I've been here since sort of God was a boy, but you know, we've got some people here who are, you know, in their 40s and 50s who've never actually worked anywhere else. You know, lots of people have been here for 10 years, 20 years or more. And in manufacturing, you know, your business is your people. it took me a long time to perhaps understand that. But you know, your business is your people. You're only as good as the team you've got, and with bespoke stuff particularly, you need people who've done this sort of thing for a long time, who, when something odd comes up, can remember, 10 years ago someone asked us to make something that was a bit like this, and that's what we did. And you can't buy in that knowledge. You have to grow that knowledge. You have to grow those people. There isn't a quick fix, particularly if the business is trying to grow. Oh well, we'll recruit and we'll find somebody and we'll pay a couple of thousand a year more salary than Joe Blogs down the road, and we'll pinch somebody. It doesn't always work like that. It can.
No. And I think the constant innovation keeps them engaged, doesn't it? So it kind of works both ways.
Yeah,
it helps the business.
They
works for them as well.
Interesting things. Yeah.
So let's touch on COVID, as we are on day one of lockdown 2.0. Can you just tell us a bit about how it affected the business and whether or not it's going to change anything this month?
Well, I mean, we were affected as every single business in the UK has been affected. I think we've been very fortunate, and I think probably manufacturing overall has been less affected than others. At the time that the lockdown 1 came in, we were very busy. We had a big influx of orders in the first quarter of the year, and we were fortunate that a couple of the big projects we were working on in London at that time, that the construction sites stayed open. So we were therefore able to keep producing and to keep installing. So we didn't furlough any production staff at all. We did some working from home and remote working. 12 months ago, I didn't know what Microsoft Teams or Zoom was, and now claim to be an expert, certainly very experienced. And we adapted quickly. We were fortunate in that we've got a reasonably large factory, so people are generally socially distanced in their normal working environment. We're spaced out, so we didn't have to carry out too many adaptations to deal with that. So it was a bit of a challenge, but we kept going through it all, partly because our customers were still there, and ultimately you have to service your customers. Lockdown 2 is not really going to make much difference to that, and we've all been working, with distancing and screens and video conferencing, whatever, for a few months now. So, and the government advice this time has been a bit clearer. Boris, bless him, did specifically mention, the construction and manufacturing, which is the two things we do, should continue. First time around, it was difficult in that we were pretty clear we could keep going, but if we couldn't get stuff from our supply chain and materials, then we weren't going to go for very long. But this time, people seem to be a bit more comfortable with it, and the advice is a bit clearer, and hopefully I think things will be continuing not too different from what they've been.
That's good. So you haven't actually had any supply chain issues then?
Not this time around. First time it got a bit hairy at times, but we didn't actually run out of anything, but we did have to be a bit nimble in our purchasing as to where we could source things from. Some manufacturing facilities that were supplying our raw materials did close, so stocks got a bit erratic, but that seems to have rebalanced itself now.
And dare I touch on it very briefly, do you have any supply chain issues coming up with a potential no-deal Brexit?
If you can tell me what a no-deal Brexit is going to look like, then I could perhaps answer the question. For us personally, not too much. We don't. We rarely export, and we import some materials from Germany and from Republic of Ireland. But at the moment, we really don't know what that's going to look like. At the moment, nothing's changed our suppliers are still as keen to deal with us as we are to buy from them. So we don't know. My personal feeling is that when you've got two people or two companies or two countries that want to do business with one another, they will find a way to work out how to do it. If there are tariffs, that may make life a bit difficult, but if there are tariffs for us, there are tariffs for all our competitors. So it still keeps a reasonably level playing field. So
yeah, absolutely.
Who knows?
Eric, with your chair of Cornwall Manufacturing Group hat on, can you give us an overview of the manufacturing sector down here in Cornwall, but also beyond in the rest of the UK at the moment?
As I mentioned, I think manufacturing has been hit, but perhaps not as hard as some sectors. I think the manufacturing sector in Cornwall is, as you know, very, very diverse. So it really depends who your customers are. So if you're supplying aerospace, automotive, oil and gas, then life has probably been very difficult. And the food and drink sector, which is manufacturing, our definition of manufacturing is you take raw materials, you add value, and make a finished product. So food and drink falls under that to a large degree. They've had some challenges, but I think most companies use the furlough scheme. Most have seen a sort of reduction in their forward order books, which is probably the biggest concern long term. But manufacturing is a pretty tough bunch. They're pretty resilient. They're always used to challenges and change, and they've adapted as well as they can do to what's come along. So and nationally, I think it's much the same. There is very much a willingness that we want to keep fighting on, keep getting stuck in, and you deal with what comes along.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were really some lovely stories from lockdown 1 in the manufacturing sector down here, weren't they? Can you share a few of those with us?
Yeah, I mean, there were quite a few of the members of CMG were, very involved in the fight against COVID, and some still their order books, rocket up because the products they were supplying into pharmaceutical, medical, were what was needed straight away. So we had, we've got some members who supply into those sectors as a matter of course. And then some who sort of changed direction. This is what manufacturing does and has to do, and adapted, making screens and visors and lighting for some of the Nightingale hospitals and things like that. So there was, if you can find a good news story amongst COVID, then these were definitely some of them.
Yeah. That's great. I've got a couple of questions here. There's quite a few coming through, so I'll start with them now. Ryan's asked, how do you manage the balance between leading the operational side of the business, which he assumes has become a bit more of a challenge recently with COVID, and the need for continually managing your pipeline of new and potential clients and customer projects?
It's a juggle. We've got a really great team. I've got a really great sales manager, and then Andrew Holland, my business partner, deals a lot with the operational and day-to-day side of things. So it's a juggle. It's a juggle, as it always is. I mean, when you're producing a bespoke product like we are, COVID or no COVID, you're always looking for the next order, the next contract, always looking for the new inquiries. So it's something that we do, day to day anyway. COVID's made it a bit more interesting. You have to be a bit nimble, but you just have to cope with what comes along.
Thanks, Eric. Ellen has asked, what do you do to grow skills so you continue to have the craft skill set locally? And although we mentioned you've got some people that have been around for a really long time, do you struggle to employ new staff? Training
is the key. apprentices are the key. You know, you've got to keep people coming through, and some of the best people we've got are the ones that we've grown ourselves. Recognised talent in people. You know, we've got some people that started off in production and, you know, working in the factory on machines, who've then moved into other sectors of the business. Give everybody the opportunity to grow and to train and to change. Some people don't want it. Some people are very happy doing the same thing day in, day out. That's what they like. Other people want to grow and change. So give people the opportunity for training. We've always been very big the last few years on using training, internal and external, mentor people. Just give everybody the chance, and again, create a culture that everybody can grow. I mean, I tell everybody that we recruit, you know, that when you come to work for Prospero UK, you know, our intention is you will work here for a very long time, and then as part of that, you've got to train people and encourage them and make them better.
I think that's a really great culture to have. This training, does it involve training locally, or do you have to send the team away to train as well?
Generally, it's locally. We use both of the local FE colleges, and also, you know, some private sector training providers for particular things. Jumping back to CMG, we've developed a lot of training courses over the last couple of years under the Developing Skills for Business project, which was EU funded. One of the big challenges with the manufacturing sector has faced for a while is that the training on offer didn't really suit what we wanted. I had some sympathy for the FE providers in that they were directed from central government as to what training they should be offering and what courses they should run and how it was done, which was all well and good, but if it wasn't actually what us, the customers, wanted, then it wasn't really a lot of use. So the manufacturing sector was fairly disenchanted with the FE sector and what was available. And as part of that, although they are now much better now, and we're working much more closely with them, under Developing Skills for Business, we asked people, what training do you really want? And, you know, it was supply chain, it was management, it was IT, it was marketing, whatever. And then we, as a group, we developed our own training courses and then found people to deliver them. So it was a big turnaround. And that's what you need, sector-specific training. Marketing for a manufacturing company, for instance, is a whole world different to marketing for a hospitality or entertainment company or tourism, something like that. So you have to find the relevant training. With a lot of training courses, we say to all our team when they go on courses, you know, some bits won't be relevant. You've just got to identify the bits that are and grab them and treasure them. You know, training can't be one size fits all.
We've got another question from Ian. Ian says, great story. He's interested in how you deal with the London high-end house market. Do customers' priorities change to being more design-led as opposed to being price sensitive? And how do you change your approach there?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and this is again one of the things that we got very wrong in the early years. Originally, I used to think, oh well, if you've got the best price, then everybody's happy, and it's taken a long time to understand that people, particularly in that market, don't necessarily buy on price. They're price sensitive, but they don't always buy the cheapest thing. They don't want the cheapest thing. Sometimes there's a bit of psychology in it that they think if they're paying more, it must be better, when it isn't always the case. So again, you've got to have the sort of the can-do approach, and the sales team need to understand that if someone asks for something different, your response shouldn't be, oh well, that'll cost more, because that's not why they're asking the question. They want something different, So you have to temper your approach slightly and say, yes, we can do that first, and then the cost of it, or the technical side of it, can follow on. And often with the with the high-end residential, people ask for things and they're not possible tactically, but you have to sort of gently explain that, and not just say, no, you can't have that. Often with the very high-end residential, you're dealing with people and characters who are used to, in their working lives, to just tell people what to do and ask them for something and they get it. And you have to understand that if you can't supply what they're asking for, then you need to explain carefully why that's not possible. So it's quite a different mindset, quite a different people skills to deal with it.
Yes. Ryan's asked, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for the business looking ahead for the next 12 months?
Well, gosh, that is a big question. Who knows where the economy is going in the next 12 months? You know, there's going to be difficult times ahead. So in terms of opportunity, since COVID, I mean, the housing market remarkably has been very, very strong, and we still see a big pipeline of new high-end residential projects. So I think probably the biggest opportunity will be for us to concentrate a lot on that sector, because possibly, we don't know, possibly some of our traditional commercial and fit-out work may be in the short term reduced. So I think it's, someone once told me, follow the money, and if the money at the moment is in high-end residential, then that's where you should be promoting yourself and concentrating.
One thing we haven't touched on yet is the diversification into Q stairs. Can you tell us a little bit about Q stairs and how you identified the opportunity there?
Yeah, we realised for some time that on the lower end of our price market, that some of what we were producing was just not competitive. We could make a small bespoke staircase for sort of between £7,000 and £10,000, and there were kit staircases on the market, generally available, internet companies, generally imported. Quality-wise, they were nowhere near as good as ours, but they were a quarter of the price. And if you had a photograph of ours and a photograph of theirs, it didn't look terribly different. So from the customer's point of view, they were saying, well, why should I pay £8,000 when I can buy one for £2 that's the same? And when you've got that sort of price differential, it's very difficult to say, well, ours is better, because people are saying, well, it looks the same, it's the same size, it's the same colour, it's the same shape. How can it be 4 times better because it's 4 times the price? So we realised we needed to have an additional offering to meet this challenge. So we've developed a set of a design of kit staircases, which people can buy direct from the internet. We realised early on, there's no way we're going to compete head on with some of this imported stuff. It's just not possible. But people were willing to pay a bit more, knowing they would get better quality and dealing with a UK company. So we developed that. We developed a separate brand, a separate website, and a different approach, in that these had to be quite streamlined through the manufacturing process. We couldn't afford to have a large amount of design time and management time into them. They had to be simple, but still good, and that's what we've come up with. So it's in the early days, and we launched it earlier in the year, and it's so far going very well.
That's great. Earlier you touched on how marketing in manufacturing can be different to other sectors. Ellen's asked, what do you think the main marketing and comms challenges are for manufacturers in the Southwest?
I think firstly the geography, you've got to make a very clear, strong message that it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter where you're based, wherever the customer is, you supply the customer. What brought it home to me a few years ago was that we had a phone call from a customer that we had done many jobs for over the years, and said, we've got a project in Exeter and we see that you're in Cornwall and we wondered whether you would come this far to do work. I said, well, yes we do, we're working in Glasgow this week, so Exeter is actually quite handy for us. But it then dawned on me that obviously the message wasn't getting out to the customers that we were able to supply nationwide, which is part of the reason that we did the rebrand of Spiral UK away from Spiral Construction. So I think the important thing is to show, is to not make a big play on where you're geographically based, more the fact that is where you geographically supply, particularly in this internet age. In most cases, people don't really care where things come from, as long as it turns up on time and it's good quality and they're happy with the price. They don't mind. We all click on Amazon on our phones and the postman brings it the next day. You've no idea where it's come from, no idea, and really don't care. So I think it's getting the message out as a manufacturer, whatever your product is, we'll supply you, it'll be there on time, it'll be good quality, it'll be at a fair price, and we'll look after you. And that's the bit to stress. I mean, Cornwall has quite a strong brand and quite a unique brand. We find customers like to talk to us about, oh, you're in Cornwall, or I go there on my holidays, and chat about that. But you have to make the big play is that we will supply you wherever you are, and it's nothing to do with where we're based.
That's great. With your CMG hat on, Eric, Ellen's asked another question. She's interested in your view on why telling stories about the positive things going on in the manufacturing sector is so important.
Oh, totally. And manufacturers are the worst people in the world about saying what a good job they do. Manufacturers like making things. They like to keep their head down and not tell anybody about it, just get on and we make stuff, and we're busy because we're always making stuff. And a lot of quite large manufacturing operations don't have necessarily a marketing manager, a marketing person, or a marketing budget, and that's something that's really, really important. If you've got a good news story, you have to shout it out. And to do that, you realise quite early on that you have to, that costs money to do that, and which isn't in itself a problem because that's all part of that factors into your selling price. So, but you've got, it's very, very important to shout about what you do, because manufacturers are dreadful historically at doing that. They're getting better, but they don't. I think it's the whole character of the industry. They make things, they like making things, that's what they're good at. They view advertising and promotion, marketing, all this sort of thing as a bit of a dark art that's what Kellogg's and Highend do, not what us as engineers or metal bashers do. And that shouldn't be the case.
Thanks, Eric. Really, really good advice and insights into the manufacturing sector. That's all of the questions. So do you have any final words of wisdom to anyone in the manufacturing sector at the moment?
My words of wisdom would be, we all know it's flipping tough times and it's going to be tough for a while, but head down, keep going with what you do. Ultimately, if you believe in yourself, then you'll get there. And manufacturers are pretty robust, pretty resilient bunch. We always have to deal with challenges, legislative challenges and market challenges and economic challenges, but we'll get there. Manufacturing is a big, strong sector in the UK. Fourth or fifth biggest manufacturer in the world. So we're good at what we do, so don't forget that, and just keep at it.
Thank you. Really positive encouragement there. So I think that's all we've got time for then. This webinar has been recorded, so it will be on our Manufacturing Knowledge Hub, which was launched this week. Please pop over there to have a look. There's lots of useful insights and articles for businesses in the manufacturing sector. Eric, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.